So first, the definition of momentum. Momentum, it is product of mass and velocity. So the mass of an object multiplied with velocity, what we get another quantity, and that quantity is known as momentum. So simply you can say momentum is equals to mass times velocity, or mass multiplied by velocity. What is the reason why you study this quantity? Example, if I say you have two objects of different masses. First object is 2 kilograms and the second object is 5 kilograms. And both collide with the wall, both hits the wall. Which one have greater impact when it will hit the wall? Which object? A 2 kilogram or 5 kilogram? Which one have greater, which object will have greater impact when it collide with a wall? A 2 kilogram or a 5 kilogram? So you cannot complete the, you cannot give the exact answer for this question. Why? Because you don't know what speed the objects are moving. Maybe this 5 kilogram was moving with 0.2 meter per second, and a 2 kilogram was moving with 100 meter per second. So which one have greater impact during a collision, or which one exert greater force during a collision? So how you can identify that? You can use the momentum of the object. So basically what happened, you can use the momentum. So 2 kilogram is moving with 100 meter per second. So what is the momentum of this 2 kilogram object? So it will be 2 multiplied by 100, which is equals to 200. What will be the unit of momentum? Unit of mass is kilogram and unit of velocity is meter per second. So unit of momentum is kilogram, meter divided by second. For the other object, it's a 0.5 kilogram and it's moving with 0.2 meter per second. So when you multiply, you will get 1 kilogram meter per second. So which object will have a greater impact during a collision, or which object exert a greater force during a collision? So how you can identify? You can identify by using their momentum. The object which will have greater, the object which will have greater momentum will exert greater force. So momentum is the quantity which is a product of mass into velocity. So when mass multiplied by velocity, you can find momentum of an object. And using a momentum, you can identify which object exert greater force during a collision. So the one which will have higher momentum will exert greater force. The one which is having lower momentum exert a smaller force. So significance of this quantity is mainly the momentum is used to identify the impacts of object during the collision. And it is a vector quantity. So when we say it's a vector quantity, vector quantities have so what is the momentum? The momentum of an object is a product of mass into velocity. When mass of an object multiplied by its velocity, what we get another quantity, and we call this as momentum of the object. Any doubt in this? So using a momentum, you can identify which object exert greater force or have greater impact when it collide with another substance. So if I say you have a stone of mass, say 0.5 kilogram, and you have 2 kilogram object, both are moving towards the wall. 0.5 kilogram object is moving with 100 meter per second, and 2 kilogram object is moving with 4 meter per second. If there is a wall, if the question is which object will have greater impact when it collide with a wall, or which object will experience or exert greater force when it collide with a wall. So how you can identify? You can identify from a quantity which we call momentum is a product of mass and velocity. So mass is 0.5 multiplied by velocity, which is 100. So 0.5 into 100, that is equals to 50. So momentum of object A is 50. What about momentum of object B? It's 2 multiplied by 4, which is equals to 8. So if a question is which object exert greater force or which object have greater impact on the wall, so object A will have a greater impact. Why? Because it has greater momentum. Then the change in the momentum or impulse. The change in momentum is having a name, and what we call that as impulse. So how to calculate an impulse or change in momentum? Impulse is equals to final momentum minus initial momentum. So when we subtract the two momentums, the final momentum minus initial momentum, we get another quantity and we call that as impulse. So example, an object is moving on the horizontal surface and the mass of this object is 3 kilogram. So object mass is 3 kilogram and it is moving with a speed of 40 meter per second. After some time, the speed of object changes. How I can change the speed of an object? There should be a resultant force. So we apply a force of 3 kilogram. We applied a force so that this 3 kilogram object will change the speed. And the new speed is 60 meter per second. And the question is find the impulse. So how to find the impulse? The formula for impulse is the final momentum minus the initial momentum. Initial means starting and final means end. So what is the initial momentum here? The starting momentum. So the initial momentum is the product of mass and velocity. So mass is 3 kilogram multiplied by velocity, which is 40. So 3 multiplied by 40, what we get? We get 120 kilogram meter divided by second. Then we will find the final momentum. How we can find the final momentum, which is also a product of mass and velocity. So mass is 3 kilogram, but the velocity is 60 meter per second. So 3 multiplied by 60, which is equals to 180 kilogram meter per second. So we have the initial momentum and we have the final momentum. The question is calculate impulse. Impulse means the change in the momentum. So what is the change in the momentum or the difference in the momentum? So the final momentum was 180 and the initial momentum is 120. So 180 minus 120, what is the result? That is equals to 60 kilogram meter per second. Is it clear? The concept of impulse, whenever the momentum change, basically how the momentum can be changed. Momentum can be changed if the mass of an object change or if the speed of an object change. Yes, impulse can be negative or positive because it is refers to. So in this example, the object was moving in a straight line. The object does not change the direction of the motion. So we got the initial momentum and we got the final momentum, and the difference in the momentum will give us impulse or change in momentum. So we are getting a positive answer. If we are getting a positive answer, it shows that the change in momentum or direction of the force is same as the direction of initial motion. But it might be different. Like example, sometimes the object rebound or object bounce back. So if the object bounce back, say this is the ground, an object is dropped above the ground and it was moving with the speed of 10 meter per second. The mass of object is 2 kilograms. When object hits the ground, it bounces back. So it bounces back. For example, this is 2 kilograms. And it moves upward with a speed of 8 meter per second. And the question was calculate initial momentum, final momentum, and change in the momentum. Or impulse. Impulse or change in momentum having a same meaning. There's no difference between that. So first thing, because momentum, keep in mind, momentum is a product of mass and velocity. Mass is a scalar quantity, so direction is not important, but velocity is a vector quantity. So direction is important. So if I take the first direction as positive, if downward I took as positive direction, then upward I should take as negative. So if downward velocity is 10, the upward velocity will not be equal to 8, it should be minus 8 because the direction changes. If I want initial momentum, so what is the initial momentum here? Initial momentum means momentum before collision. So initial momentum is a product of mass and velocity. So mass is 2 kilogram multiplied by velocity is 10. So initial momentum of this object 10 multiplied by 2 or 2 multiplied by 10, which is equals to 20 kilogram meter per second. That's the initial momentum. What is the final momentum? So what is the final momentum? It's also a product of mass and velocity. So mass is 2, but I will not substitute 8. I will substitute minus 8. Why I substitute minus 8? Because the direction is changing. So if downward I took as positive, the upward should be negative. So 8 multiplied by 2 is 16, but we will get as minus 16 kilogram meter per second. So momentum is also a vector quantity. So positive momentum means it was downward and negative momentum means it is upward. If I need a change in the momentum or impulse, so what is the change in the momentum or impulse? Is the final momentum minus initial momentum. The final momentum is minus 16 minus the initial momentum is 20. So this will be minus 16 minus 20. The final answer will be minus 36 kilogram meter per second. So the change in the momentum is minus 36 kilogram meter per second. What is the significance of the negative sign? What negative sign shows that the direction is opposite, because momentum is a vector quantity, or change in momentum is also a vector quantity. Why we took minus 20? Because the formula for change in momentum the formula for change in momentum is final momentum minus the initial momentum. So final momentum was minus 16. This minus is for difference, and initial momentum in the question was 20. This is the initial momentum, which was 20. So minus 16 minus 20. So minus 16 minus 20 is equals to minus 36 kilogram meter per second. What is the significance of negative sign? Because downward you took as positive, so upward is negative. So what is the direction of the change in momentum? Because you are getting a negative answer and negative direction is upward, so it will be upwards. Is it clear? The change in momentum. So if the direction change, in the previous example, the direction remains same. The object was moving in a straight line. That's why both of them I took as a positive velocities. But in the second one, the direction changes. So if one I took as positive, the other one should be negative. Any doubt in this? Take the screenshot of the previous one. First this one. Then this one. Okay. Some questions just now we discussed regarding the momentum and change in momentum. A ball of mass 0.5 kilogram fall and hits the floor with a speed of 10 meter per second. So object of mass 0.5 kilogram moving with 10 meter per second. It rebound with a speed of 8. The collision between the ball lasts for 0.5 second. We need an average force during a collision. How to calculate a force? The formula to calculate force, F is equals to ma. Force is equals to mass multiplied by acceleration. We have the mass, which is 0.5, but we don't know acceleration. What is acceleration? The acceleration is a change in velocity. So it's final velocity minus initial velocity divided by time. So what is the initial velocity? This is the starting, which is u, and this one is the final, which is v. But in this example, the direction of motion also changes. First it was moving down, then it is moving up. So if downward I took as positive, the upward I will take as negative. And the time is given, which is 0.5 seconds. That's the time interval. So what we can do, we need an average force or force, which is F is equals to ma. We have the mass, but we need acceleration. Acceleration is change in velocity, v minus u divided by t. So if I want to find acceleration, what is the final velocity? I will not take as 8, I will take as minus 8. Why minus? Because the direction changes. If downward I took as positive, the upward should be considered as negative. So it's minus 8 and downward, this is negative sign for the formula, the change. And what is the initial velocity? It is 10 divided by time. What is the time interval? 0.5. Minus 8 minus 10 divided by 0.5 is equals to minus 18 divided by 0.5. And minus 18 divided by 0.5 is equals to 36. So acceleration will come out 36 but negative meter per second square. Then we need a force. How to get the force? F is equals to ma. Force is equals to mass multiplied by acceleration. Mass of an object is given in the question. What's the mass? It's 0.5. And what is acceleration or change in velocity in a unit time or rate of change of velocity? It's minus 36. So 0.5 multiplied by minus 36, what we'll get? We'll get minus 18 Newton. Now, what this negative sign shows, so if we are getting a negative answer, so what this negative sign shows? This negative sign shows that the object, because the downward direction was positive and upward direction is negative, we took. And we are getting a negative answer, so it shows that a force of 18 Newton is there. And what is the direction of the force? The direction of the force is upward. So C is the right answer. Is it clear? We need a force. How to calculate a force? Force is mass multiplied by acceleration. So we have the mass, we need an acceleration. What is acceleration? It's a change in velocity divided by time. Final velocity we took as minus 8, initial velocity is plus 10. So minus 8 minus 10, because plus minus minus, divided by time. So we get acceleration as minus 36 meter per second square. So if we need a force or the direction of the force, we have the formula F is equals to ma. Force is equals to mass multiplied by acceleration. Mass is 0.5, acceleration or change in velocity is negative 36. So when we multiply, we will get minus 18 as an answer. What is a negative sign means? Because if a downward we took positive, the upward is considered as negative. And we are getting a negative answer. It means the direction of the force is upward. Next, how is momentum? Momentum is denoted by V, calculated in terms of mass and velocity. And what type of quantity is momentum? So how we calculate momentum? It's a product of mass and velocity, and it is a vector quantity. Vector means it has direction. A ball is at rest on the ground. A boy kicks the ball. The boy boot is in contact with the ball for 0.04 seconds. The average force is 200 Newton. The ball leaves the boy boot with a speed of 20 meter per second. Which row give the impulse of the boot, means change in momentum, on the ball and the average acceleration? So how we calculate the impulse? Impulse means the change in momentum. Whenever two objects collide with each other, they will have the same change in momentum. So we need which row gives impulse of the boot on the ball. So change in momentum of boot on the ball. So initially a ball is at rest. So if the ball is at rest, what is the speed of the ball? The initial speed of the ball is 0. Meter per second. And what is the final speed of the ball? The final speed of the ball is 20 meter per second. So we have the speed. Initially it was 0. Finally it is 0, but we don't know the mass. What's the mass of the ball? We don't know. So what we can do, we can find the mass. How we can find the mass? First we can calculate acceleration. How to calculate acceleration? Acceleration is change in the velocity divided by time. So acceleration is the change in the velocity divided by time. The final velocity is 20. The initial velocity is 0 and the time interval is 0.04. So acceleration, it's 20 minus 0 divided by time interval. The time interval is 0.04. So 20 divided by 0.04, what's the answer?
500.
500. So acceleration is 500 meter per second square. The second thing, we have to calculate impulse or change in momentum. So for calculating impulse or change in momentum, mass multiplied by velocity will give us the momentum initial, and mass multiplied by final velocity will give us the final momentum. But we don't know the mass. We can calculate the mass. How? F is equals to ma. Force is equals to mass multiplied by acceleration. So the force which is given in the question, is 200. Mass of an object we don't know, and acceleration we just found, which is 500. So 500 is multiplied, other side it will be divided. So this will be 200 divided by 500. So 200 divided by 500 or 2 divided by 5, we will get 0.4, the mass. So mass of an object is 0.4 kg. Now we need an impulse. We already have the acceleration, but we need an impulse. Impulse is a change in momentum, not change in velocity. If I write 20 minus 0, that will be change in velocity. But the momentum, the change in momentum is called impulse. So mass of this object is 0.4. So mass of object 0.4, and it was initially at rest. And here also the mass was 0.4 and it was moving. So initial, what is the initial momentum? Because initially it was rest. So 0.4 multiplied by 0. So initial momentum is 0. And 0.4 multiplied by, because 0.4 is a mass, multiplied by velocity was 20. So 0.4 multiplied by 20. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8 and 0.2. So this will give 8 only, the final. So 0.4 multiplied by 20 will give 8, the final answer. So 8 kilogram meter per second. So here the momentum is 0 initially and the final is 8. So what is the change in the momentum? Impulse is a change in momentum, not change in speed. So it's final minus initial. So final was 8 and initial was 0. So impulse is equals to 8 kilogram meter per second. There is also another unit of impulse that I will also discuss, but this is the first unit in which impulse is equals to change in the momentum, which is kilogram meter per second. Is it clear? So we calculate the acceleration. Using acceleration, we got the mass, and using a mass, we calculate the initial momentum and final momentum. Initial momentum was 0 because the object was stationary. Final momentum because the object was moving with 20 meter per second. So final momentum is a product of mass into velocity. So 0.4 multiplied by 20 will give us 8. I means impulse, the change in the momentum. So another question, an object is moving with a speed of 3 meter per second. So this is a starting speed u. After time, the object is moving at -4. What does it mean? It means the direction of the motion changes. Like if object was moving towards right, if object was moving towards right, initially the speed was 3 meter per second. It changes the direction and the value or the magnitude of the speed velocity as well, which is -4 meter per second. The mass of object is 5 kilograms. So here the mass is 5. The mass does not change. What is the change in the momentum? How to calculate change in momentum? It's final minus initial. So when I multiply 5 multiplied by 3 will give us 15. And 5 multiplied by 4, it will give us 20, but this is minus, so it will give us minus 20. So this is the initial, the starting. This is the initial momentum and minus 20 is the final momentum. But the question is calculate impulse. Impulse means the change in the momentum, which is always the final minus initial. So the final momentum minus the initial momentum. The final momentum was given minus 20 minus the initial momentum is 15. So minus 20 minus 15. What we'll get? We'll get minus 35 kilogram meter per second. So A will be the right answer. Is it clear? The concept of impulse and momentum. Momentum is a product of mass and velocity, and impulse is a change in the momentum or difference in momentum. Any doubt in this? Impulse is equals to final momentum minus initial momentum, or the difference in momentum. So in terms of formula, when we represent, if I say an object is there of mass m initially moving with velocity u. After some time, the speed of object changes, its velocity changes to v. So what is the momentum? Initial momentum is mu and final momentum is mv. So in terms of formula, we can say where v is the final speed, u is the initial speed, m is the mass. So in terms of formula, we can say impulse or capital I is equals to mv minus mu, where m is the mass, u is equals to the starting speed, v is the final speed, and I is the impulse or change in momentum. Take the screenshot of this. There is also another formula for impulse. Impulse is also force multiplied by time. And other unit of impulse can be Newton second or kilogram meter per second. So if we have the force and we know the how much time the force is applied on the object. So if we multiply these two, we will also get the impulse. So impulse is having two formulas depending on the question. Some question they give you force and time. So you can find the impulse just the product of force and time. Some questions the masses are given, the velocities are given. So you calculate the momentum before and you calculate the momentum after. And the difference